Yo, right, what happened is I was trying to insert a new MIDI track to the drums by doing shortcut, which is like Shift Command T, and what that did is it didn't abort, it just kind of stopped my screen recording thing right in the middle. So I've learnt a lesson, but that's why this video is in a separate bit. But I guess it was at a nice convenient point because we were starting with drums, so it's kind of pointless me saying this now, but I imagine what I'll do is stick the last 25 minutes as kind of like the introduction, laying the foundations video, and then this video, this part will be the drums and whatever else happens. So now we're going to start with drums, and if you're starting here and didn't see the other one, or skip the other one because it was boring, which it might have been, what we've done so far is we've got tempo, we've got the original track warped, and we've got 3 pretty clean samples that we can then use and arrange to make our edit from. And what we're going to do now is the drums. So I'm not going to do the shortcut because that aborts my screen recording thing. And we're going to do right click, insert MIDI track. And I'm going to use a simpler, which is a simple sampler. So it's called simpler, pretty cool, right? And we're going to go to my deadmau5 sample pack, and we're going to pick a kick sound I like. And to save time, I'm going to pick kick sounds and snare sounds I've used before, so I'm just going to try and find them. Sweet, so I picked out kick sounds. It's not the one I thought I was going to use, but basically what I did is I picked quite a long kick sound, because I haven't told you, but what I'm planning on doing for this edit is what I do in quite a few members and tracks, which is not actually have a bass line or any sub going on, because it's just a members and track, it's not some crazy bass track. But if you have quite a long kick, what you can do is just by using like a floor to floor kick pattern or any kick pattern that has a long tail, it kind of feels as though there's a bass line, but what you really hear is the kick drum. Because to people who don't produce dance music, they still don't feel it as a kick drum for that amount of time. They still feel like a beat, like every other track, but there's a big tail with a lot of bass that feels like a bass line. So yeah, I picked a kick with a long tail, and yeah. Hopefully I stick with it, but who knows, I'm just going to rename this track Kicks, because I forget what's going on otherwise. And sweet, I'm just going to insert MIDI clip, and we're going to draw on a 4/4 drum pattern. And if you notice, I use a lot of shortcuts when I'm drawing out MIDI notes, so it's worth learning them. There's things like Command B to toggle the little pencil clip off and on, and then there's Z and X. That's for something else. There's like C and V, which toggles the different velocities. By default, I always make sure I draw on notes with 100 velocity, just because it's like a default. And I don't get confused. But yeah, there's also things like if you're picking a note and hold shift and then an arrow, it makes it longer, shorter. So you'll find me just using all the shortcuts without telling you what I'm doing. So that's what I'm doing. It's worth learning them, it saves a lot of time. So I'm just going to quickly hear what that kick drum sounds like. I don't like it, so I'm going to do another one. Pretty common with the way I make tracks. I'll pick a noise and then realise it sucks. sounding a lot better. I think I might use that kick before. It's got a proper tail on it, the last one really didn't. So if you look at the peak meters here, you can see what the kick's doing roughly as far as levels go. And you'll see there's bass the whole time, but on the beat there's a definite kind of peak. There's like and that's what gives it the beat. So it's not going to have crazy loads of sub bass like a lot of the Moombahton and especially the Moomba core tracks have, where they just completely max out the bass. It's going to be a little bit more easygoing, but it's Moombahton. It doesn't have to be kind of aggro and in your face. It's not really our point. You want to make it a little nicer, so that kick will do. So right, now we want to pick a snare. So insert MIDI track, same as before, rename the track. It's time to snare. I'm going to pick it simpler, double click, and pick a snare sound. I'm just going to play that folder. Right, snare. No, I don't like that one. Right, if you listen to a lot of my stuff, you'll know that's a snare I use a lot, and it's just because I like it. Well, most of the dead mouse snares are really well processed, they're layered up, and they're pretty much good to go. I find it a lot easier just to pick a snare that's good to go, as opposed to and then layering them all up and spending hours on sound design. So I also just dragged a spectrum analyzer on so I can see what's going on. So let's just trigger a few notes. Cool. So yeah, it's the one I'm used to. It's got a pretty big fundamental note around 172, which is quite low for a snare, and it's also really big for a snare, so it's got a lot of weight and punch to it, and it really punches through. And it's just really well processed. Although it has got a lot of low end rumble, you can cut that out of the mixing stage, that's fine. And yeah, I normally get in the habit of just chucking in my spectrum analyzer on my tracks so you can see what's going on. One useful thing is by hovering the mouse over the peak, you can actually see what note the various drums are, because drums do have notes. So if you really want to make a track good, you might want to have the drum kind of in key with the rest of the track, but that's a real minor point. You don't have to have the drums in key, but it sometimes helps. Anyway, right, time to draw on the snare pattern. If you've tried making Moombahton yourself, what you've probably done is you've gone and drawn the same pattern that everyone uses, which is something like this. Again, like I probably said before, just experiment with stuff, you know. There are lots and lots of drum patterns that make it Moombahton-y, but you can kind of do what you want. That's a pretty basic one I like. I'm going to use this pretty generic pattern for this track because a lot of my other ones have had more complicated patterns, and I want to do something slightly simpler. This is the big snare. We're going to add in some other stuff, so it's kind of useful to have a main big snare following the kind of nice Moombahton pattern. But we're not done yet. What we want to do to give the track a little bit of kind of like swing or groove or whatever you want to call it, we're going to nudge the positions of these notes off very slightly, like a 1/64 or 1/28 or something. So we can go to 1/32. Zoom in and narrow so that it's narrower, and then we're going to nudge it across and then see what that sounds like. And then we do the same in the other one. difficult. So what I did there was just trying out different nudging. Ended up settling on nudging it on 1/28 off the normal position. It gives it a little bit of swing, but not too much swing. And when you add in other drum sounds, you start to get a little bit kind of like a groove going. Because what you want with Moombahton, especially if it's a less aggressive one, is you want it to be kind of danceable. So you want to just nudge all the positions of most of the snares just off a little bit, and throw in some random shit just to kind of give it a bit of groove. Some people can do this in a non-random way. I can't. I just have to try out different positions and listen to it and go, that sounds okay. So yeah, that sounds okay. Now to remind you, this is what we've got so far: basic kick and the snare. This is the foundations, the backbone behind your drums. We haven't mixed it together, but it doesn't matter at the moment. At this stage, we just want to get the pattern down. Even the levels we haven't got right. So just get the pattern going. So now we've got the basic thing. We want to add in some little kind of shakers or little tings or just some other kind of auxiliary drums. And there's loads of ways to do this. You can either do it just like we've done with the kick and snare and add them in yourself, or you can do what I like to do, which is just grab a loop and then just keep trying different loops from sample packs on the background behind it and see which gives it a nice feel. So I'm just going to have a new audio track and we're going to find some loops. And very predictably, I'm going to use deadmau5's loops because I love his sample pack for Zephyr one. It's fucking awesome. So we're just going to listen for some loops and then try a few in and see what happens really. cool. So I could spend hours picking loops, but for the time being at least, I'm going to settle on those two. They kind of make it a little bit mad. But if you look at the loops in a little more detail, you can see that. What gives it the kind of groove and the swing, and what makes it sound kind of really dancey. If you look at all these positions, a lot of them are kind of nudged very, very slightly off. And when that all adds up with loads of other things, it just gives it kind of a real cool, swingy kind of vibe to it, like the usual kind of off all over the place. So what I want now is I'm feeling like there needs to be another kind of snare that's kind of nearly as big as this one. So I'm just going to use duplicate, and then snare 2, call that snare 1, and then delete down, and let's pick another snare sound. Right, so snare, let's take another snare. So yeah, now we're just going to try and experiment with different patterns for the second snare, and then, I don't know, just try and get a cool vibe out of it. Yeah, not really feeling it an awful lot right now, so I'm just going to have a bit more of a play around. And this is all part of the process. You can get really lucky and get it right first go, but considering drums are kind of important, I'm going to keep having to play around, maybe try some different loops and some different sounds, just trying to get kind of a really cool vibe going. So yeah, I'm just going to keep jamming around for a little bit. Right, so I've had a bit of a play around, and I think I'm just going to leave it as those three, at least for the time being, because I don't want it to be too mentally overcomplicated on the drums, because I don't know, it's not my sort of style. Drums are a real personal thing anyway, so just kind of have a play around. I think I'm going to leave it with these three, at least for the time being. But then what I'll probably do is, after I've got the basic arrangement down, I'll find some other loops or sounds to kind of chuck in and out. just to kind of keep things interesting, more subtle ones. But I think this will be the basic drums that will kind of always live together, will be the main drums. So. Yeah, I think I'm happy enough for that for the time being. So what I've done is kicks and snares, chuck the snares a little bit off the quantization. Also quantize, just kind of very slightly nudged. And then I've got this loop here from the dead mouse back, which is nice and shuffling. Quite a bit going on, to be honest, so it's not as if my loops are too empty. And my drums are too empty, so. Also worth noting, I'm not processing these, mixing them or anything. I'm just leaving them like this. I have to kind of, when I'm listening to it, I have to imagine what they'll be like once I process them and mix them and make them real pro sounding. So, yeah, that's what I've done. I think I've explained roughly how I inserted them in anyway, but yeah, this is all part of the process, just trying to like jam out. And also, one of the things I got stuck in the trap of doing when I first started producing was I kind of drag out a loop or use a sound and then keep trying to make it work, or I'd settle with it if it didn't sound right. And you're really not going to be afraid of just getting rid of something just because you've selected a kick sound or a loop or a pattern. Just don't keep trying to force them together. Sometimes your first decision was not the right one. Not that there is a right decision, but you know what I mean. You just don't be afraid to kind of go back and start again, or go back to something you did initially. So these are our basic drum sounds, and these are the ones I'm going to have. And, yeah, also it's just my personal preference, but when I'm trying to figure out my drum sound, I do it all in this session view, just so I can kind of, you probably saw us triggering clips and kind of stopping sections and trying different combinations of them, and that's the advantage of the session view. I have an APC40 next to me. What I sometimes do, if I'm not doing a tutorial and I have loads of time, is I'll just load up a shitload of patterns, a shitload of loops, and like fill up my grid of looks like about 80 clips on my APC40 with sounds, and then I can just spend half an hour just pressing buttons like a button presser, and then kind of coming up with a cool sound, and yeah, just kind of jam it out. And if I was doing it myself, I'd probably spend longer than coming up with these, but for the time being, this will do. And cool, so there you have it. There's the drum sorted. So we have the basics, foundations built, and now we have some drums. Next step will be the arrangement, but I'm going to be clever. I'm going to start a new vid for it, so I can kind of do this all in sections. So sweet. I'll see you in the next video.